How will it affect clients and lawyers from a day-to-day perspective?
Um, it'll potentially be expensive
Okay.
in terms of compliance because it is a substantial kind of compliance regime. This is not something that, um, you can um, deal with on the hop or in how can I put it, in a cursory sort of way. I mean, the
Yep.
penalties are such that, um, well, we as professionals, we can't take that risk. We're going to have to comply with this and do it properly. So, it's potentially going to be expensive, substantial obligations, ongoing obligations as well. And I suppose day to day, some key obligations, key requirements will be um, knowing who your customer is
Mm.
and knowing now that's easier said than done when you're dealing with trust relationships, trust structures, groups of companies, etc. But what the AML, at the risk of oversimplification, what the AML Act is about here is getting to the ultimate controller or the ultimate beneficiary of a group of entities. So I think day to day, you're going to need to know who is in control of a structure, and that's going to mean the due diligence, and um, working out, in accordance with your business's risk appetite, what industries, what individuals you're comfortable dealing with.
And I
Um,
think you sort of mentioned it before as well, because there's a number of firms we're talking to as well. You mentioned, I wrote it down, it's the ongoing obligations that are going to be just as important, aren't they?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, this isn't a set and forget.
Yeah, that's right.
This is
Yeah.
a set and review.
Yeah.
And it's hard to sort of generalize too much here because different different professionals are going to have very different risk profiles. So some will be very low, some will be very high, some will have a mix. Some these obligations won't even apply to. And I'm jealous of those of you that don't have to comply with this stuff. And we saw Paul yesterday. We are talking to an accountant at lunch who wasn't caught by this, by Trench 2. So
Right.
um, yeah, I think it's very much going to be an ongoing type um, analysis that's going to have to be done in relation to your AML obligations. And yeah, by reference to the risk that you have to self-assess. So this is the other thing with the regime. You can't say to Austrac, what's my risk? You have to work it out yourself.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not always easy to do that. I mean, if I may give an example here, I had a client who was being um, basically debanked. He couldn't get bank accounts with the big four because he was in the business of nightclubs and pubs, and some of the big four were just taking this sort of arbitrary view. No, we've got market power. We don't need you. Um, so they had issues getting access to financial services.
Mm.
I had a bit of a look at it, and I was sort of disappointed because I've done work, given advice to the big banks as well as everyone else, and I was a bit surprised by that because these days, I understand once upon a time pubs and clubs were probably higher risk in terms of financial crime because lots of people were using cash, particularly with poker machines and so on. But these days everything is being done with
Yeah.
cards.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, in terms of because we had to do a money laundering risk assessment, financial crime risk assessment for that business as well. And I took the view that it actually wasn't very high risk because of the way they were doing things. Every transaction just about was caught. There was virtually no cash except for what was being taken out of ATMs, which, is all recorded at the customer's end, right? By their bank. So it wasn't like people were taking, you know, bags of money into the clubs to play with the poker machines. It was not like that at all. So um, I give that example because I just think it's important to scrutinize and analyze, your risk and not just take a sort of primitive view because some things that you might think are high risk are not necessarily high risk. Like I'm sure once upon a time, pubs and clubs with lots of poker machines were higher risk. These days, I think they're probably lower risk.
Yeah. So in
So
that self-assessment that you just mentioned, so that would be each firm, every law firm and accounting firm will have to do a self-assessment on their business, or is it on their clients?
it's on their business, yeah.
Okay.
So this is something that seems to be coming up as a recurring issue.
Mm.
A lot of newly regulated entities think that the obligation imposed upon them as of 1 July will only apply to any new customers they get. So that's not correct. The obligation applies to the firm or the reporting entity under the AML CTF Act. And it, subject to the designated services being provided, and we can talk a bit more about what that means. But
Yep. Yep. Let's do
um,
that.
in relation to the services being provided, um, the AML obligations apply firm-wide or reporting entity-wide. And as for what you have to do with previous or sort of existing customers or clients, that will depend again on where you've set the risk
Yep.
and what you've done when you onboarded those customers and what you do, if anything, ongoing in relation to those customers. Because again, all of this stuff is an ongoing obligation.
Mm. Mm. Um, Two things. So just to clarify, you mentioned the reporting entity. The reporting entity is the firm.
Yes.
Okay, great. And let's get into the designated services because that's probably another one that I know in our Melbourne lunch that came up and said, what's the actual service we're providing? So
Mm.
can we jump into that?
Yeah, so if you jump onto one of the legislation databases and look up the AML CTF Act and you search through it and you look for references to accountants and lawyers, you're not going to find many. You might find a few in relation to legal professional privilege, or client legal privilege, as I refer to it. But um, in terms of listing entities that are caught by the legislation, they're not listed by discipline, profession, by industry. They're listed by reference to designated services.
Yeah.
So within Section 6 of the AML CTF Act, there's a table, and as you'd appreciate, it's quite long. It sets out all of the designated services that are caught. And so as of 31 March this year, there's a new part in the table dealing with professional services, and that lists a whole bunch of stuff that, classically we, lawyers and accountants, do. So that's not to say all accountants and all lawyers are caught by this, and that's definitely something, at the outset possibly worth taking advice on, whether you're even caught, because if you're not caught, again, congratulations.